My name is John Wilkinson, Chair of Creative Writing, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Trevor Joyce this evening, but to do so with a rather failing voice, so forgive me if my voice peters out. Trevor Joyce is a poet like no other, but an otherwise disparate range of poets is united in two respects: their own high achievement and their admiration for Trevor's work. From Evan Boland to Tom Rayworth to Fanny Howe, very dissimilar poets find Trevor's poetry in some way akin to their own work and preoccupations, and to be inspirational for it, whether in procedures, tone, or in its deep resonance with Irish song and poetry. Such poets are looking from different angles at a body of work that has not been shaped in a nameable matrix, a particular school of writing, but from the start has been strongly formalist, lyrical through overt artifice as the foundation of its effective force, specifically Irish in its historical consciousness, while international and modernist in literary allegiance, which actually means specifically Irish, if Yeats, James Joyce and Beckett are your lodestars, and intricate in construction but clear and unshowy in diction. Although it is the intricacy that has invited much critical commentary, to decode the references leads nowhere near the be-all and end-all which inheres in Social Body and Song. Such a combination of modernism and a grounding in the song and speech of a people is rare and compares with W.S. Graham or Gwendolyn Brooks. To write this introduction, I opened Trevor's 2001 selected poems with a first dream of fire, they hunt the cold, almost at random, and quite near the beginning, my eyes lighted on these lines halfway down the page. Fourth hour, the river turns. Bells leap along the walls like vagrant gulls. Shocking the lovers out of arm's reach, they return out of the metal night into their hour of silent laughter. This is perfectly poised, it is pellucidly clear, does exact work with line breaks, makes the ordinary phrase arm's reach powerful. Mitternacht becomes the metal night of bells, and the clanging of bells, bulls and gulls hushes as these lovers return to each other's reach, a silent pause, a clearing in the bell-divided temporal world. Throughout this poem, timepiece clocks through anger of the watcher. The poem is marked by such traditional poetic virtues, but as the title announces, it also tracks programmatically into the rhetoric of rage. So its lyricism neither makes universal claims, nor does it claim authentic personal emotion. The anger in pitching bells is at once stipulated in advance, contrived, and entirely convincing. Whose is the language in this or any of Trevor's poems? He is a master of selection, and scholarly truffle hounds could enjoy many an hour sniffing out his sources. That brings its pleasures, but such inquisitiveness does not trouble my experience of what one critic has nicely called the still flux of Trevor's poetry. It is apt that his work is seen differently according to a reader's stance, since its organization is characteristically cubist, the cubisms suggested by some early William Cullis Williams, but more exactly by Trevor's poems. His poems refract. This is best appreciated in his longer works, like the magnificent Trem Niall, which meditates on the formation of colonies, not without political import for Ireland, but the politics of the work are indirect. Trem Niall presents a collage prose text down one side of the page, drawing on a large range of scientific and anthropological texts, intricated subtly so that Victorian scientific writing on insect colonies and scholarship on the transmission of folk song or on the operations of incremental memory, colonies in the brain, form constellations. They are paralleled on the right side by sparse poems based on the English of a Maori lesson book. You could look at this poem from any number of angles. Of course, Trem Niall reflects on its own procedures, as any intelligent writing does. Take this short excerpt from the left column of one page. There's no such thing as time, just a dense constellation of some thousands of nodal points bursting out every few seconds into a short phase of rhythmical flashing. Yet we may speak of the biology of time. At first a few lights, then more, increasing in rate and number with a deliberate crescendo to a climax, declining then and dying away. After due pause, the efflorescence is repeated. With each such rhythmic outburst goes a discharge of trains of travelling lights along the stalk and out of it altogether into several branches. What activity is this? The managing of breath the while we sleep. And on the right-hand side, I have just arrived, the food is just cooked, I have just been reading, the parrot which I have just bought is lost. The dense constellations, the rhythms, these are felt to thicken in reading this work. It may consist of parroting, yet the parrot is lost in the constellations, and the formal pulse that constellates keeps us breathing. The poem gathers through its materials in recurrences, and biology and music here keep time. Trevor's most recent publication is a perfect instance of this virtuosity. Rome's Wreck is a translation into contemporary English of Edmund Spenser's 1591 Ruins of Rome, which is in itself a translation of Joachim du Bellai's Antiquité de Rome of 1553. So here are 4 lines from the opening of the final poem in Spenser's version. Hope ye my verses that posterity of age ensuing shall you ever read? Hope ye that ever immortality so mean harp's work may challenge for her meed? Trevor's translation runs as follows, with the 4th line halting towards its question as Spenser's does. And is it that you hope, my words, that you'll be heard through worlds and times to come? Do you have hope's verse lasts while years turn, modes change, and men fail? Without end rhyme, Joyce manages through a stateliness of verse that even exceeds this work of Spenser's. Justly, we could claim that Trevor Joyce joins the Pleiad. The important poetry resource, Jacket 2, offers a useful feature on Trevor's work with a full bibliography, an interview, some notes on the composition of Trem Noel, and a scant biographical note. So far as the biography goes, the important thing to mention is Trevor's work as the publisher of New Writers Press, which has a fine record of recovering neglected Irish modernists, as well as publishing new writing, and as the founder of the Cork Sound Eye Poetry Festival, which has been running for a couple of decades, bringing poets from around the world to an event of hospitable exchange. So it's a joy to offer Trevor our own hospitality now and invite him to read for us. Trevor Joyce.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for being here. It's a great pleasure. Okay, and I'm going to read largely from this selected poems, which came out a couple of years ago, with just a couple of new things at the end. And I'm reading the stuff from this in order as the sections occur within this. This is organised according to a method known only to me. It's certainly not chronological, so my reading will not be sort of moving forward chronologically from earlier work to later work, apart from at the end when I leave this, and I will read some later work. Start with a poem in 3 sections called Tohu Bohu. The first section of it is a little creation myth in prose. 1. First things first. One time a friend of mine came in for a few empty crates from a Mazda import agency. With a couple of rolls of felt, he transformed his poky yard into a well-appointed loft, where he kept fantails first and pouters, then tumblers, and finally some serious racing birds. At that juncture, the fancy breeds had to go because their freaks disturbed the steady flyers. But he never banded his soft birds for racing or bothered with a mandatory clock, just released them when he rose and let them settle back at evening to roost reassuringly secure. In the end, though, he got thoroughly sick of their ceaseless moaning, so he kicked out the lot of them, refitted the wire grills with glass, sanded, sealed and papered down the primitive walls, screeded the floor, and later on moved in himself, the family and all their traps. For a good week after, in these novel quarters, he picked over an odd volume of Pliny's Natural History, shaken intermittently by the indignant refugees beating like stormy rain against the panes and on the flat felt roof. This is a true story. 2. A quotation at the beginning from the Gnostic text, Thunder Perfect Mind. Do not look upon me on the dung heap, nor go and leave me cast out, and you will find me in the kingdoms. And do not look upon me when I am cast out among those who are disgraced and in the least places, nor laugh at me. And do not cast me out among those who are slain in violence. But I am compassionate and I am cruel. When the shattering key turns clockwise, the golden tumblers fall through courts where suits are duly packed and paid. The ward turns from the crooked talon, lofty strut and pinion, down their powers and dominations to the striking jack. 3. And now these carriers wheel painfully aloft, ringed round with tokens, protocols, addresses, codes, conventions, empty forms, and the streams freeze in their shadow. Remorselessly they brood on every post, spill milk and thick saltpetre as they flap from the twisted pair to coax all the news comes down. So tell me, how would you put down a lingering infestation of goddamned angels? Set snares of blood, raise ghosts and memories for decoys, bait deadfalls with true sleep? Or keep by the fire a niptic cat to stalk high winds and pounce on fallen stars? They just don't get the message yet. Suggestions, please, so I can get forever shut of their close breath fat with clay, stone floods the midnight crashing of their verminous wings. A few translations from the Turkic and Finno-Ugric folk songs. The truth I dreamed, I craved sweet fruit. At the heart of the mountain, seams of silver shine. Eat up, drink up, enjoy yourselves, while yet our shining world survives. A young soldier's song. Like last year's winter wheat, my hair scarcely sprouted and was shorn. Like green timber, my soft bones scarcely sprouted and were shorn. A wedding song. I set down oats behind the barn. Now comes the scythe. Ah, my cousins, my dear friends, now comes goodbye. At break of day, the nightingale. I thought my mother called me home. In the white night, the cuckoo sounds. I thought my father called me in. The fishers fished. Dark within darkness, let them approach that dry estuary whose waterless wave brings down the gravel of worlds to a bed of sand, because the diamond is feeble and restless. Leave them be guided to the motionless storm by the evidence of trees and mineral structures tumbling slowly through the hushed light, so they may see this still disturbance reach deep within the wrenched metals, making them whole. Have them discover flame without fire, where it adjusts itself, brooding on wood and stone, so they may bind apes and lower vertebrates and lay them under its blue claws, and after gather them again, unharmed and whimpering. They may set nets below, the fish leaps. Nets above, the fowl flies by. Fires within, the flame scorns, withdrawing through stone or settling in the open sky. Then they are snared by water. Wind devastates their dreams and fire nests savagely above the derelict jaw. I'm going to intercut these other poems with a series of poems written in exactly 36 words each. There's an essay online called The Phantom Quarry, and if you're curious at all as to why I chose 36 words and what these are I'm trying to do with these, you'll find out in that. So, a few 36-worders. Day of cleansing. Men forget their women, women their children. The slate is wiped clean, words rinsed clear of old associations, all history obliterated. Occurrence of this climacteric is irregular, unpredictable, must be professionally provoked. Early foresight comprehends the king's health, his hunts, his dreams, those cities he constructed, his income and his absolute decrees. Theological constriction follows. Life events interrogated shrink in range. Negative outcomes are not entertained. All is auspicious. The flow diverted overnight. We woke to stones, to stone rivers, lakes of sand. Sleep now under bridges which span only slow air. Slaughtered our parched herds, disintegrated our dry vessels. Learned decorative complaint, plangent in imported formulae. How much must something change till it become another? So long a thing may be and yet survive itself. When every least circumstance bears already the wounds of its futurity, Nothing is to be taken lightly. A few, four from that book, there are copies of it here. Rome's Wreck, the version of the Spenser sonnets. It's in, one thing John didn't mention is that the translation is into English monosyllables. Spenser in Ireland, he was not only a poet, he was also the author of a prose tract, The View of the Present State of Ireland, published in 1594, which was basically, you can read it as a tract for the effective commitment of genocide. He also, the year after he arrived in Ireland in 1580, he was present at the Smeric massacre, the Smeric massacre, where between 600 and 800 papal soldiers, Irish, French, Italian, and Spanish, I think, were persuaded to give up their arms on the promise of mercy and were put to the sword by Raleigh, a little band of soldiers led by Raleigh personally. Those who weren't killed immediately were broken on the wheel and offered the chance to convert to Protestantism and then hanged. The initial massacre took 2 days. To return something to Spenser for his pains, I took his language, his rich Latinate language, and hamstrung it and gave it back to him as monosyllables. And there's an epigraph for the whole set, which is a proverb in the Irish language, Marin lodagan fin ach ni varan belachan, which translates as the trace of the pen continues to live, but the mouth that sang does not live, which I translate at the very end. The last line and a half is a translation of that into English. And each line is exactly 8 words, so 8 syllables, since each word is a monosyllable, with the exception of the third last line of the whole thing. No, it's the fourth last line of the whole thing, which has only 6 words in it. So 4 of these. Number 3. You look for Rome in Rome, do you? In Rome no Rome is to be found. These same old walls and gates you see, such wrenched halls are what Rome men call. See then what wreck, what waste is left, and how that she, which with such strength tamed all the world, comes weak to heal, the prey of time that eats up all. Now as the grave of Rome, Rome serves, as Rome and no one else quenched Rome. Her course that runs fast to its end still streams on through, still falls. Vain world, that which is firm now flits and fails, and that which flits is still and stays. 7. You high sad wrecks and views, you Rome all fake but for the name. You tombs that still hold safe the brief slight fame of souls long gone up to their gods. Arch that's pure win, spires shot up so they scare the sky. Tick, tick, too bad, that bit by bit you end in ash, scarce worth a laugh, your spoil, our source. Though for a time your frames make war on time, yet time in time will wreck your works and names and sour your dregs. My own sad wants, rest at your ease. If time make end of things so sure, it will too end my pain and you. 9. Hard stars. And you gods as harsh, skies of sheer spite. You too, false world, be it by rule or just through chance you shape the acts on earth of men, why long since did you work so hard to make this world that lasts so long? Or why were not these halls of Rome made of some stuff as strong and hard? I don't, as does the mob of fools, charge these all things that move through moon's light, dolls of time that run to dust. No, I say this, though I don't care to cross those minds at odds with me, that one day all this all shall cease. And the last 32. And is it that you hope, my words, that you'll be heard through worlds and times to come? Do you have hopes verse lasts while years turn, modes change and men fail? The skies grow dark. No fame stands fast, or these stones spread round, clean cut, cold and hard, dressed by sharp steel, so far less frail than script should have it made. I use the tools I've got. Hard words passed down, passed on, may speak on some days when the live voice breaks. Not all words bear the weight. I mean, but they may not. And these? Pen's mark lives on, but not the mouth that sang. Without asylum. True, we may surmise how a knife hatched out of meat should fledge, span with blade, then unexpectedly take flight onto some sill, moult there with clutch of fist falling from it, arm with balance of muscles altering to lift and lay its murderous intent, and disturb dreams, and brood how everything broken, so they say, points to the unbroken. Forgetful is it of what did the breaking? As I witness my own loathing and desire walk through the dreaming labyrinth of my child, while detailed depositions state how further on within the wood whose skew bent registers which wind prevails, itself perpetually ragged and worn from ocean breath and sun and every flame it quenched in its far fetch. The bright axe blossoms suddenly, the long bones lever up from it like anthers, and beyond the startling calyx of teeth an avid, buzzing, perishable fruit set thicken and disintegrate, to load with sweet, secure deposits of afflicting gold their remote cells, and stipulate eventual shelter from the fall, asylum from the edge, a luminous domain unbounded. Seldom they relate why the innocent, whose mouth is like a bowl of blood, blurts words already darkened with gods and sacrifices. How I have the face of those whose faces have rotted. And although whirring blades have been observed to crystallize spontaneously throughout the native rock, and ramify in gangs and casual crews, good companies exfoliate pervasive and exotic dust where tellers and their firm controllers fight to reconcile accounts, and sound is severed from the dog's throat. There is no further testimony to the effect how in this realm of agents, deeds, and instruments one sees at last displayed an armoured beast, whose head, a growth of flame, in the shadow of the ripening clocks, the river Thames, destroys itself, the jug absconds, leaving to the grasp only a sustained bewilderment, like dice spinning. 36-worders. Say, how was the table set? Were the knives angled just so? Did one dog loiter here, another there, multitudes yawn? What was the appearance of the man in her bed? I foresee empires laid waste. Some 40 years later, approaching the capital, they heard it rattle and wheeze like a toy. Once within, only with difficulty maintained balance on streets still slick and caked with human fat. Or was it 20? Presence of the angel of death is generally acceptable. Even following a series of happy scenes, it adds a certain weight difficult to achieve by other means. Having small children play naive divinities may also work. Okay, a little set from the Chinese of Ruanje. Was writing in the 3rd century of our era. It was after the fall of the Han Dynasty. He came from a noble family who might have been expected to rise in the hierarchy very quickly to positions of considerable power. After the fall of the Han, there were warring warlords across the country. And if it seemed that you had the possibility of rising to a position of power, if you appeared to be sort of a potential ruler in waiting, you would probably be assassinated before you could achieve that power. So Ruanje and a number of his friends made themselves look deliberately as foolish as possible. They made a point of getting drunk, having elegant conversation about no practical matters whatsoever, certainly no talk of politics. Ruanje, as a result, lived into reasonable middle age. A number of his friends weren't so lucky and were killed. So this is a set from his great series, which I've translated as, or done versions of, as under the title Outcry. And the one thing you can hear is this sort of contempt for the low, this aristocratic voice that sort of sees itself above the crowd. Blood-sweating horses breed in the extreme west. From times past memory, their drovers herd them east. When spring and fall drive hard without remission, How then can wealth or rank resist? Clear dews glaze the orchids in the marsh. White hoarfrost sees the level plains. In the morning, youth is soft. Late at evening, age is hard. We hold in perpetuity no grace. Morning, I scale the precipice. Evening, descry remote massifs. Thornbrush invades the plain below. Gregarious birds flicker up. In solitude the phoenix dwells, discharging the inheritance of its kind. Heaven and earth are by a single tree conjoined. Account all other plants mere show. Around, through forest undergrowth, the fattening bindweed twines and thrives. Seriatim phoenix rise, flapping vast wings to test the limits of cosmography. Quick tilt of pinion, see them ride the jet stream and obliterate space. They break their fast on windfalls of eternity and sup exalted outside time. Should these who haunt the blue fear nets? Should such consort with primitives, disclosing old vacuities, trading coarse tags? As a boy, I grasped the sword and easily outfenced my masters. Clean strokes sliced the clouds till skill bred notoriety. My sword chopped at the desert edge. My horses drank peripheral chaos. Banners whipping the wind joined gong and drum, my only music. War is a sheer affliction, furious and sad. Boyhood bitter. Exiting by the eastern gate, I sighted zones beyond the market where austerity has secured sufficiency and nature keeps the kingdom peaceable. I was engendered in an evil age. Frost stiffens now my rich brocades. Foothills and summits shiver in the chill air. Under heavy clouds, darkness is thickening. The migrant geese long gone, only the raptor shrieks. Mode, mood, and time crash heart to a white void. The great Irish language poet Eoghan O'Rahilly died in the early to mid 17th century, and his last poem is said to be written on his deathbed. The Irish poet Brian Coffey sent it to me once in the 70s, asking me to translate it, and I thought about it for about 15 or 20 years, and eventually the penny dropped one day. I avoided being hit by a car as I stepped foolishly off a pavement and came up with the solution. So, cry help. Cry help? You'll find me fast in my grave first. Who now could come if I did call, since our stronghold, our hope, our legitimate lord has himself suffered seizure and failed? Spun by the rip, my mainstay snapped, arse breached with shit bile eats my gut to see our ground, our shelter, our wildness, our civilized precincts, hawked for a pittance by wasters. Our rivers, their frets and divisions stand still, black marshes and Pallas, the bride and the Boyne, Lake Sound run red and the ominous seas since that Jack took the tricks from our king. Keen rain on the road unsettles me. No sound comes near but the roar of that unstoppable falls. Proud master of salient and hollow, of royal domains, his stomach is lost with his lands. Now the hawk who holds fast those rents and accounts knows no man as kin. Come down too far from original heights, temporal races fret rock face where raging headsprings supplement the river that drops through the settlements. I stop and death rides up to me, and the dragons are quenched in their courses, and I'm bound to follow my leader down where his white ledger covers all the deal. I know that this is my mortuary section. One on the first emperor of China, who, as you know, is buried outside the capital Xi'an with his terracotta army. And according to the first great historian of China, Sima Qian, he's buried in this chamber, which is a simulacrum of the earth above, with running rivers of mercury and mountains and so on. It's a small image of our world above. Cold course. The jaded sun lies low in his halt galaxy, set hard like honey in the stiff comb, with house and planet, tree and shivering peregrine, all subjects under him consepulchred, underfoot and done for, a mere smoke of stars. The august heat, geometry of dance, full wilt and fall, all yet survive in the slow sugars. So he now sits throned in dust, holds vestiges and memoranda for his court, whose armies dominate their night quicksilver courses irrigate. These he thought measures to kill time and grief. Gorged on vermilion, his peers sweated bright death, transfused the rock veins to their own. The sovereign they bolted down still circulates through this enchanted fastness of white sudden stone. I should have mentioned as well that apart from the rivers being echoed in Mercury, a great many of his court are thought to have died from attempts to extend their lives through forms of Taoist alchemy. And they swallowed mercury and also gold. And the stories were that when they had taken a lot of this, obviously they were killing themselves with mercury poisoning, but they actually would sweat mercury into their bed sheets. So that's the, gorged on vermilion, which is an oxide, I think, of mercury. His peers sweated bright death. A few more 36-worders. Once encountered, you will always know the tormentil. Deep the mineral soil is sealed and red with iron. Pines are dense and acid-logged. Fresh rains run rancid in the level dark and raise the yellow tormentil. The marvelous bird won't sing on every branch. I don't always have a quilted bed. Pity me. Wait for me. Turn to me. Kiss me. Pity me. Red apple eating, straw bale sleeping. Turn to me. Let's have a market in affects. Bulls gravitate to rage, bears to disproportionate sadness. Shorts, considering happiness overvalued, are active there. Options offer profits with significant risk. Secondary markets trading used securities are deep and abject. I used to work in industry as a business systems analyst for Apple Computer, so as you can see, I didn't come out unscathed. Eye masked behind its own force. Mouth issuing fears and agitated reminiscence through which both threats and pleadings are sensible. Fists beating, feet pacing, body twisted between vehement extremities. Ah yes, you are trafficking in feelings. Saws, 3 poems, 5 stanzas in each stanza 5 lines. 1. Flame has a skin of cold, light sets limit to the dark, so name me then the outside rind of memory, the clothes love wears. Rock in the stream bed, fluid that your element is absence, complex with vortices and currents, bears cold against the bone. Still hand reaches, grips itself. Silence, vexed, touch when presence would suffice, anatomizing scrutiny, break the made whole, care gathers, mute, blind, here. Faulting crowd from fend, touch impairs the waist, the small, the shoulder prompts the touch. As instruments diminish even to the heart, needs must intense persist. Spontaneously, sight unseen, in the intervals between where venture hunts its gain, beasts may become familiar and grow tame. 2. Hold friends and colours and sleep fast. Inch and abyss, ocean no barrier. Truly the execution is woeful, passion suffers where the flimsy heart won't break, won't break. Chance set of winds you, fixed deck of bones you, my chambered and mind, my furnished with tables, my table of cases, of tides. The water touched deteriorates and gains, last of what's passing, first of what's to come, robs and returns. Action dons habit of effect. Slight, uncontrolled, ghosted out from us, however to come to again, if we nothing have laid down. Every sake acknowledged serves this am traversed by words. Provisional coherence, interim and out of joy, out of sorts, able for joy. 3. Mirrors, eclipses, departures, loss instantaneous or slow, barren doubling. Death is all we see awake, and sleeping only sleep. Fronts and systems move across. Through the weather of such data, drifting hungers and accessory rage, you claim with care your personal effects as general consequence accrues. No cage is found for wind or rain, so older than desire that stirs the hand, prior to relief, to grief, to nerve and nerves. What by the heart is hidden, hidden is. Structures unseen, the seen decide. You near, space intervenes. Gone, head will conjure head, the lid, the lip. Waking we share and sleeping turn aside. Eyes twinned make the world deep. Have you forgotten that past is anyhow indelible? Scape from its map withdraws, to lodge at heart in dream through fright, flight, poised. Map gone, you have forgotten nothing. A few more 36-worders. Light, astral, obdurate, implacable, light, the strongest, biggest thing, crouch down here beside me, light, my pet, my little dog, my doll, and I will caress, untangle your wild hair, and you will be my friend. Examine your own features, your distinguishing characteristics. Are you so sleek? Pelt cannot remain intact, eye always bright. Living dims. Here we enhance the vestiges of animation. With wire and common glass, we mend broken beasts. Neglect in camera. Prose poem. It is another obscure chamber. The town is trapped in light and shade and limited to the back wall of the shop. The glasses man and his parrot inhabit an intermediate dimension. The parrot knows the names of things. Ruskin, he says. Then shag, sendal, gazatum, dobby, fleece. An ignorance of grammar does not allow his speech to accumulate meaning. His master drafts the projected image on his scrim, things he knows, but not their names. They make an odd pair, this glasses man and his pet. When the bird dies, his master will have him stuffed. He loves him so. Already selected is the corner in which he will perch, steadfast. The figures moving through the inverted silver town are averaged into a poised stasis. They represent the citizens as the bird represents the tropics. Later, the glasses man will attend with oils to the precise textures of cloth, of hair, of milk pouring, a needle penetrating lace, sunlight on pearl, on skin. His nails are dark from years of grinding colours. His eyes are dark from years. His skin, gossamer. 2 songs from the Hungarian. Father, come home, my mother's not well. Hold on, daughter, I'm dancing. Father, come home, my mother's being shrived. Hold on, daughter, I'm dancing. Father, come home, mother is dead. Hold on, daughter, I'm dancing. Father, come home, my mother's being waked. Hold on, daughter, I'm dancing. Father, come home, my mother's being buried. Hold on, daughter, I'm dancing. Katie falls sick by the walnut trees, by the hazel trees, by the nut tree grove. Her mother asks her, where's the pain? Not my head, not my heart. My head doesn't hurt, my heart doesn't hurt. Mother, have my heart cut out, my calling heart, my joy. Have it cut out, pack it up in a case and carry it safe to the shop. And when they ask you what you sell, say it's Katie's calling heart, her joy. Right. I'm going to abandon the book now and just read a little more stuff, more recent stuff. A few 36-worders. Futures are difficult, must be teased out of the wildness of the living. Sadness or undue panic in the beast is a distinct indicator. Should the ceremony discover flawed or terrifying flesh, all bets are off. Cold, dry, ghosts from wild stands of grass circumambulate the now, very sedentary. Polished stone spades cultivated in these sequences sank houses into the soft soil, an inhumation cemetery here too, all cushioning against straw clocks. Massive slabs of light lofted over zones of metropolitan importance, stained to saturation. Such immense gravity distorted the foundation, forming basins where sentiment sediments. Strata of sheet metal mark levels where molten coin and weaponry rehardened. A poem, a collage piece, the basis for the collage being a work by William Petty, who was the surveyor for Oliver Cromwell in Ireland, but he also was a founding member of the Royal Society and was part of the project where they were trying to write an account of all trades, one might say now, so that the tradesmen could be replaced by machines. He was very into automation. His survey of Ireland is, I think, one of the finest early examples of the division of labour in action. So this is on the matter of cleansing for David Lloyd. Through the chalk and oils and other accidental foulness got into it along so many hands and shops, this forest has become crowded. So then, void it out. The lions stoop in shadow, their skulls gone all to glass, then rinsed in urine, or sometimes banded with gold of swine's dung. Almost blinded with the pounding of the mill, which acts as scrubbing does in more accustomed washing, still they hunt whatever slight thing moves, but as heraldic carnivores arrested now on metal and as scandalously bold authorities. For if it be labour to kindle colour in a grey prism, for a great engine, and no man then must it be fit to voice affairs so great as history's in truth, bolting out in brilliant tongues as cloth does. Nor will the cost of this be tolerable, could it not be performed, with engines standing for men's sweat, cascading in bright blades, so fast, so plunging as no man can rule. Pistons and cheap sorcery make possible, issuing the gleam and high threads no soaps or other strong lexivia can penetrate, no harshness, even the most scalding, can again scour them down of. And indeed, as even whitest heat in due course will ramify down to bare fine branches, as salt in soaps, settled in fat matter, not yet tallow or oil turned thick by coction, this forcing of imagined innocence unbelievably brings back a calling out above the level ponds, a crashing out of space. The oils release the swords out of their ground, yet hold them after propped in sight as low feculence, having no part but to be loathed, yet not permitted to be gone. And the grains of salt, 10,000 strong, all tiny sharpened knives of them, cut the astral filth away. It was the water introduced this biting tide. It is the water bears the swords away, dispersing out through ports and coves, so they and it come clean at last, and do quite well elsewhere. A terrace of stars subtends the present whole, and it is glittering, but it is brittle. The fragility of it is that, though they be composed alike of innumerable little whorls and turnings, yet they have in common nothing further but the aim to be elaborate, to constitute some threadbare sly fabrication, which is the triumph of individuals otherwise good enough. Now it is easy to conceive how pernicious to sun and age are all, if even one small sharp grit were in the bath, in which the soundest integral is violently beaten as it lies in self-protection, ply with ply, time on time again. At the extreme, think of a grave made up with blackthorn or with broken glass. One assault might altogether ruin several cushionings, so by repeating the same mischief many thousand times in any one passage, as by incalculable storms of birds, that whole may, in as many times as are required for consummation of this cleansing, probably be beaten all to pieces. A few more 36-worders. Certain chambers were overlooked in the systematic clean-out. To these we tracked down the source of infestation and found them pullulating, infested with gods swarming, their nits lodged in the weave of causes, hatching in an expectancy. From some commanding forward ridge of history, where disciplined reserve lets cool nostalgia drill back to us in this our time, when it was still particular to gods to be immortal and to men to die. Attention centered on the well-preserved skeleton of a young soldier with coins from the Great War period in his pocket. What shocked us was that he was still holding a pencil stump in his right hand. And the last, a set of 10 poems, each 14 lines long, but they're not sonnets, dedicated to Owen. The Stone Master. 1. The markets in the early light are crowded with inedible loud blooms going for a song. Of confectioners where sweet destructives are luminously spun, you will find no lack in the king's shadow. Patrons throng and haggle. It is one thing to see, but quite another to discern the wholeness of what's seen. The fountains clogged, the sun obscured, the silver tarnished, and the parched seed chokes amongst the rubbish of these blinding thoroughfares. By the wall of the inner palace, faint memory, all conserved and candied out, serves for a welcome pick-me-up. 2. The trapping and onward selling of faces was once a flourishing trade. No more, alas, and complete sets now rarely reach the market. Large families were more challenging and therefore more precious than smaller ones. The vendor's temptation was, therefore, artificially to extend, augmenting thereby the associations and his yield also. So we arrive into a confused legacy. Bitterness laced with coma, nests of bright amnesia fledge unfathomable grief. Nowadays we accept this cut and shut of faces as displaying the true masteries of knowledge. The true fancier never must shun strange. 3. The dwellings being constructed mostly in wood, fires are frequent, sometimes of such ferocity as to threaten the entire fabric of the city. If such conflagration be not quickly reduced, the high officers are bound to attend and force the hunt. Their Carfax of light and winds has sightways all sides, and stands on permanent watch lest fire break free. Be alert always among such sundry, so no treasure escape. By exercise of due discretion and an educated eye, even the most unpromising filth may yet resolve to find collectibles. Should one abscond, the sentry beats an immense drum and shouts at the top of his voice, "Fire there is! Fire there is!" to set nets and lift citizens from dreams. 4. By day, flags are unfurled out to indicate the colour, arrangement, and direction of the fire, whereas at night minor incendiaries serve as indices or symbols of the great. The first imperative is to make smooth and to keep closed all surfaces. Any slight crevice may conceal the starting up of a violent outbreak. Slightest error give the game away. A serious conflagration in this capital is rendered more terrific than in other human cities by the loose singing and speaking of the multitudinous throats in the street. 5. I discovered in many family groups individual faces which did not resemble their siblings. Subtle discrepancies, to be sure, but determinative. I start a tale, you finish it. You switch into a funny story, and I duly laugh. So we are near familiars. It is the unmotivated howling through the hours of darkness unsettles both of us. Check the relevant licenses, and sometimes the signature differs from that of the majority. Distrust is duty, and always this decision: a genuine clerical error, or does it suggest worse? Kith binds to kin. Claxons hold in close reserve. 6. These gullets, notwithstanding the culling of thousands by late majesty, now gawp and gape as before, and scavenge abroad, guzzling offal from the victuallers, and the brains pluck and sweetbreads of the accidental dead. None own them, but all protect them. They are never admitted into houses, miscellaneous as they are, and against them the groves are tight, but the streets are surrendered to them as a kind of rightful domain, while some consider it a sort of duty to furnish housings for their stray utterances, with comfort of vocables, paper, script, and pabulum. 7. They are of a peculiar race, somewhat like the inside neck of a sheep, and are said to be susceptible of a deep quinsy, though not of outright and conspicuous madness. They maintain also among themselves a hierarchy of minute distinctions, so should any vagrant stray from his familiar turf, he is at once snacked upon by maws, jaws, and pitiless incisors, those whose place is sacrosanct. It is commonly remarked that they know an alien by his swank, and cannot help but utter when they see a hat. 8. One story told to the master may be apocryphal. A dutiful investigator was received one day by one of his children, who abruptly answered, "Oh, Daddy's upstairs constructing families." Sounds of unsuccessful machinery drowned out the remainder, and it felt like being in a church. Wholesome, despite occasional wheezes and stretching noises, like the effort of a good yeast proving. Later, it was found that the face of prophecy had been abstracted and substituted with the appearance of an actuary, which had eyes painted on it to mimic vision. Though a very crude fake, it had evidently deceived many experts for many years. 9. Until recently, the streets were all unnamed, houses sans cipher. Districts alone were designated, generally by some prominent landmark in each. This chic boutique, that when, yon bloody shambles. Much stayed indiscriminate. Orders now have issued to remedy this inconvenience, which facilitates establishment of barracks in those diverse suburbs which were often disturbed by alien populations that refuse. Numbered chaos wanes. By night now, in the heart, the ways are still. Every human voice quiesced by evening. Were it not for the laughing of throats and the footfall of the patrol, speaking silence would reign absolute. 10. There were suggestions over the years that the stone gallery was so treacherous that it should be destroyed. Impossible. The gallery is now so vast, so held in awe, that it can be neither countered nor ignored. Inhabiting its cabinets and vaults, many there are made acute example of. One can but examine it with right exactitude, noting fault and slippage, hurting here, domesticating there. A clutch of weasons sighs by the wall, faces still attached. They will be taken away and conspicuously destroyed. Where they suffer to survive, who knows how they might sing? Thank you.